listening to the Astral Hour. I'm your host, Astral Meadow. Join me as we take a glimpse into the mysterious. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm joined with my beautiful friend, Kandi Leigh. She specializes in helping people transform their relationships. She also helps awaken people to their spiritual gifts and aligns them to better health, wealth, and abundance. As a Reiki master, her energy work is based in Reiki and also incorporates intuitive energy reading, including tarot and the Akashic Records. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, thank you for coming out. I love being in your presence. It's so healing.
Thank you. That's how I feel about being in your presence. Very calming.
Awesome. I love that. So, can you give us a little background on yourself and your spiritual journey?
Absolutely. So I like to say it started in 2014 when I started noticing some health issues within myself. And I was going to the doctor trying to get diagnosed. I can just tell you I didn't feel good. I was bloated. Food was not sitting well. And for me, I was like, my blood pressure is higher than normal for me. But they'd say, but it's in normal range. And I'd say, well, my sugars are higher than normal for me. Well, but they're in normal range. And I'm going, but something's off. If I'm going to look and feel pregnant, I should be pregnant.
Right.
So, of course, the natural thing is, well, it's probably hormonal related. You know, we can mess around with birth control if you want. I was like, no, I don't want.
Right.
That's not a good enough answer for me. So thankfully, I was connected to a naturopath. She uses muscle response testing to energetically tune into your body. Some people know it as kinesiology. Talk to your body and see what's going on inside of it. And the first time I went, it was found that I had mercury. I did grow up in Oak Ridge.
Me too.
Lead, cadmium, nickel, pesticides, candida overgrowth. Like, there was a lot going on inside of me. So that healing journey began. And I always feel like a spiritual awakening journey starts with your physical vessel. You know, clearing out the stuff that's been kind of keeping you closed off.
Right.
So then my brother passed away from pancreatic cancer on Valentine's Day. And nothing will trigger you awake like a grief when you just start processing life and you think, is this really all there is? And everything hurts. Your prayers just start coming across a little different. And that's what really started triggering my spiritual awakening. And it was while I was married, and while I was awakening, of course, how I was showing up in my marriage changed. How I was processing my marriage was changing. And I got connected to a Reiki master teacher so that she could help me understand. I had heard something about soul contracts, and I was like, I need to know about this. So I reached out to her and started going to her for Reiki. I had actually been exposed to Reiki when I was 15 years old and got attuned back then, and would say I did not understand the power of the energy I was being attuned to. Definitely did not use it. And it kind of split my energy, and I went off this way, going to college and partying and and not making my best life choices. Or were they?
Right. Leading you to the path that you needed to be on.
Yes. So working with her, getting reacquainted to Reiki, it was like that energy just started coming back to me, and I would find myself in these deep meditations, and my, the psychic awarenesses started opening, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. And she was like, hey, do you want to get reattuned to Reiki? I think it would help you. And absolutely. And as soon as I did Reiki 1, I knew I was doing Reiki 2. So Reiki 1 is where you are just getting attuned to the Reiki energy and learning to do it on yourself and work with yourself. Reiki 2 is where you become a Reiki practitioner, so you can really work on other people, but you also get tuned into what's called distance Reiki. And so it's very similar to being within the Akashic Records, because you can work through space and time, which is really cool. It really starts just changing the way you view the world. And as soon as I did Reiki 2, I knew I was going to go on and become a Reiki master. And wow, that just became, as soon as I became Reiki master, it was like I felt like the most me I had ever been. And at that point, you can teach Reiki, but right now I'm actually going through a teacher internship. And it's really cool because it kind of takes you back to basics. Once you start doing Reiki 2 and become a Reiki master, your intuition just kind of starts taking over and working with energy. And so sometimes it's nice to go back to basics.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go, how would I teach this to somebody that doesn't know anything about this? Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I found your story similar with the grieving, like really initiating the change, and also the body just breaking down. Like today is the 4-year anniversary of losing my dad, which is interesting that we're together doing this on today.
Yes.
And that was such a shift for me. I became allergic to like all of the major food allergens, which I then just like later I was first in the victim of, oh my God, now I can't eat anything. But then I started studying it, and I'm like, this is almost like spirit pushing me to stop the chemicals, stop fast food, take care of my body. I stopped smoking cigarettes. Like, so it was like the process of losing my dad really pushed me forward, but my body was responding to the grief. But then I like did this like parasite cleanse, started working with the herbalist and like the candida and all of that. So it's so wild how similar our stories were in that way, because I was spiritual. Like I had a spiritual practice, but something about the grief shook me. It changed me. I mean, I was like in therapy for like a year, and doing acupuncture and all this stuff, and all this stuff would come out. And thank goodness I had really good spiritual mentors and people that just loved me and helped support me, because I was not prepared for the grieving, So
I really love how you brought up the connection to grief triggered allergies into your life, because allergies and emotions are very connected. And if you don't clear out the emotional connection, you're going to have a harder time overcoming these things.
Right.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it all ties together.
Yeah. And it's like, in a way, I wanted to be able to eat healthier and stuff, and I would be like, gosh, I wish I could just get, and what happens? I become allergic to everything, to where it's like, well, you physically can't have it. No. But then like all the things I'm allergic to have something about them that's actually not good. Like the fish these days has like mercury in it, so that's probably not great. Like the soy is like almost impossible to find organic. The corn is, so even though I'm sensitive to it, I feel like my spirit was like, we can't move on if you keep eating these foods that are like covered in toxic chemicals. And so I don't know, I felt like eliminating that was such a key component, and I didn't realize it at the time.
It becomes an interesting journey, because for me, I had to battle not becoming afraid of food. Because when you're working with candida, I actually learned something new about candida just the other day. I read Medical Medium a lot.
Yeah.
But so, of course, traditionally, when you're found to have candida overgrowth, they're saying stay off of the sugars and the carbs, but then they also include like fruits. Right? And so then with, pesticides, I was afraid of the vegetables I should be eating. I mean, I was literally just becoming like, I've got to find a balance in there. And what I find so much is, well, first of all, I started using my intuition. I started using self muscle response testing. Some people might use a pendulum, just whatever works to connect with energy. And I'll ask, hey, is this something my body would benefit from right now?
Right.
And I'm getting a yes. So, you know.
Yes. My acupuncturist was doing that when I first had some food sensitivities. And it helped me with some of the anxieties because some of the blood testing was very, very low for certain allergies like eggs. And my body was actually saying I could have eggs, even though it was like a 0.2, the low, even my doctor said I could, but then I had this fear of, oh my God, I'm going to, eggs are bad because they're showing up at all. So thank goodness for muscle testing, because I was like, eggs is such a big part of my diet because I don't eat a lot of this other stuff. So it's like daily, I eat eggs every day. So, but it helped with the fear because I was afraid of food.
And I'm really coming more and more into my understanding of the foods that I'm guided to eat, or even just the balances I'm guided to have, really have to do with my intention.
Right.
So where sometimes my intention is weight loss, sometimes my intention is gut healing. That's really where I'm at right now. Is like, I really just want my gut healed
Right.
once and for all. Right.
Yes.
So that's where I was back on Medical Medium just the other day. And I learned through that candida, because we all have naturally occurring candida in our body, and it does serve a positive purpose. I never knew the positive purpose was to help eat up the virus, bacteria, and metals and pathogens that get into our body. So when you have candida overgrowth, it's not that it just suddenly started necessarily growing out of control. Maybe that's one aspect, but in this case, if it's having to work so much to eat up a lot of virus, bacteria, and metals, which we heard I had a lot of metals especially, right? It's growing a lot to make up for that. And so if you can address the foods and the toxins that are getting into your body, that's actually more important than the focus on sugars. And I should be eating more of the naturally occurring fruits that I've been scared. It helped me release some of my fear to some carbs that are actually good for me.
Right.
Like potatoes are a fantastic antiviral.
Dude, I eat potatoes all the time. I don't know how I would make it without potatoes.
Right? They're an antiviral.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's good to know. I think, too, like looking at candida in a different light and not just attacking and hating this thing that's actually kind of a part of you, and like forming a symbiotic relationship. Like, I'll nurture you if you back off. So, if we could find the balance. And not just be like, I hate you and I want you to go. This was like with the parasite cleansing. I had to find this middle ground of like, we all have these things, right? And they're constantly being introduced into our system. And it's a matter of finding balance. If you have your bacteria, is your good probiotics and all that is in balance, then it takes care of everything and everything starts living harmoniously. But when you start attacking certain things, like it affects your energy. These other things living within us, start draining us because they're like, oh, she's not feeding me the sugar, right? So
I absolutely love that you brought that up, because it's such a connection into everything else that I do. It's all about finding balances. Anything is good until it becomes too much, right?
Or not enough,
right. And so, things, our fears can serve a purpose because they help teach us, they help us grow. And so it's about finding that balance. I'm going to bring up a trigger subject, narcissism. And a lot of us are empaths, but an empath can have narcissistic tendencies. Narcissists are actually also empaths. It's all about imbalanced energy.
Right.
If you just back it up, bigger picture, it's very imbalanced energy.
Right.
And when that was a reckoning I had to have with myself. So in spiritual awakening world, we're constantly going through new levels of awakening, new understandings, new awarenesses. And when that was one of my lessons, that was a tough one.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
All right. So I know that you're a Reiki practitioner. Could you explain for our audience a little bit about what a session with you is like and some of the things involved in a session?
Absolutely. So while I can definitely do in-person Reiki sessions, I actually specialize in distance Reiki sessions. And the reason I love distance Reiki is because I in Reiki we're working within the energy of someone's, physical, emotional, spiritual bodies. And in distance Reiki, when I'm not physically in the same space as the person, I can read into their Akashic records. And I can get a much deeper reading on what's going on with them, maybe where it stems from, where some of those roots are. I can download a lot of guidance for them on how to navigate their way forward. I incorporate some other modalities. We were talking about the, allergy grief connection. And so there's something called emotion code. I use a little bit of that. But then I'll also just within the reading ask for extra guidance. So I'll use tarot cards, oracle cards, just whatever wants to come through that, your higher self is saying this is everything that would benefit you at this time. And it's just, they're really magical, actually.
Yeah, I really loved my session with you. I like laid in bed and like got as comfortable as I could right beforehand. And it was interesting when I went and read it afterwards, like things that I had felt. And I was like, oh, that was probably her working on this. And I even had this like sensation of kind of like a heart, like some heart palpitations. And then when I went back and read, you were like, there's some like boundaries or there was like layers that you had to work through. And I was like, I feel like I could feel that. But because you weren't like in the room or anything, I was like, okay, I trust her. So I'm just going to ride this out. And then I read that. I was like, I bet it's because you opened that center up a little for me. And I've even noticed a little bit throughout the week. And each time I'm like, thank you. Right? Instead of being like scared. I'm like, this is because the energy has basically been ramped up a little bit and you cleared out some blocks. So I'm feeling that space more. So yeah, it was so cool. Like I went back and reread it before you came. I'm like, this is so cool. You do so many things. And I wasn't even really sure about all of it beforehand. So I was like, I trust her. But there was things that you said that like no one else had ever said. So I was like, this is really cool. Like I've heard other people talk about like having dragons. And I've always been a little jealous that like I don't just have like this dragon appearing to me. But you tuned into one and you said it was basically above my crown.
Oh no, it was sitting on your it was sitting on your head. It was sitting on your crown.
Right, which is so cool. So you were saying something like the dragon would like me to listen to binaural beats and meditate before I go to sleep. So I've actually been trying to tune into this. So if you hadn't told me this, I probably would have never accessed it, right? So today I was really tired and I was like, you know what? I'm going to tune into the dragon energy. And I put on binaural beats for fatigue. And as I was doing that, I was like, I really want to like connect with the dragon. And then so I found out her name was Cleo. And I'm going to start trying. I've even found some little figures of like black obsidian dragons that I want to get one close to my bed so that I can remember and maybe even like kind of charge it for like the dreamscape, right?
Yes.
Which was so cool. I don't know if the dragons always appear with you, but it was really awesome for me to hear that. Like it made me feel like this is probably why I felt so drawn to them, but no one's ever, told me about it before.
Which could be you weren't ready to know yet.
Right. Like she's been there, but now she's like, okay, let's work together.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really cool. So I'm very connected to animal energy. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times I see animal energy in my sessions because they provide messages. And so my guides know that that's how I love to be shown messages. And I'm just very connected to the animal energy anyway.
Right. It's always surprising, like, which animals show up. Like, I had the sound healing experience where a howler monkey came up, and I was like, wow, I know nothing about this animal, But when you were saying, you were like, there's a gerbil or something. I was like, how cute is that? But I didn't think about it. It's like these animals that you don't, when you think about like spiritual animals, you're thinking about like the buffalo or like things that you've heard, but you're like, oh, a little gerbil. But then when I was reading about it, there was so many like beautiful qualities to the gerbil that I would have never thought about had it not just shown up for me. So I really loved that you could see that in it.
Yeah. I feel like in general, everything carries a positive message. And even if it is a little maybe like foreboding or what's the word I want to look for? Just a little bit of a warning. It's still meant to be a positive message because it's there to serve you.
Right.
And what's really cool is, when we're doing an energy reading, I mean, anything that's past is past, but any future is always just a potential future based on the current energies and potential futures that are currently in existence because, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So it's always just changing, right? And so if somebody has a reading and they don't like the most predictable future, change your energy.
Right.
Which is what was so cool about your session. It's something kind of new I've pieced together. I'm calling it future casting, where I tune in to a future potential reality, but it has to be one that we know is most likely. So like if somebody is really dead set that they're going to write a book and they know that they're really close to being ready to writing that book, then I'll tune into the version of them that has written the book.
Right.
And then that version of them helps give guidance and we help smooth the pathway. And so I'm shown guidance based on a pathway of least resistance. Right. And so it's just really cool. But it has to be, a potential that is definitely out there. I do have a way to, because potential physical reality is based on something at the energetic level. So if somebody, it might be that first I'm working with someone to tune them into less physical energies like peace, freedom, and we're not actually tuning into what that looks like yet.
Right. Yeah, for me, my future version is like knows what she wants and is, I guess, more grounded, and she does energy work like to keep herself in that state, like more breathing exercise. And it's funny that you even said that because I wanted to make that more of a daily thing instead of waiting until I'm like exhausted to start doing pranayama. Yes. So I've been like adding that in and I'm like, okay, well, this version of me is doing this before she's depleted. And that's why she's so awesome and that she's so grounded and focused is because she's doing like maintenance work. Yes. Where for me, I guess I kind of wait till the last second, or I had been. I'm not now.
I love that.
Like I'm already tuning into her, and you were like, she's about 50 steps ahead, right? But that's not really that far, right? It's not impossible for me to access her.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, I would really just love to say that how we start our day is the most important part of the day. And how we start our day really starts the night before.
Right. That was when you said the dragon, like tune into it before sleep.
Yes.
No one's ever told me that. I'm telling you, I have done like many healing sessions with lots of different types of healers, but I'm like, why has no one told me this? I guess because I needed it right now.
Yes.
And so it's been awesome creating this ritual that's not super draining. You know what I mean? It's not, I have to cook this and burn this and, and I do that a lot with my new moon stuff. So in my mind, I'm like, if it's not exhausting, is it even a ritual? But like it can literally be me just imagining my dragon before bed, and tuning into her. That's it. I don't have to do like 45 minutes of pranayama breathing every day. It can be a couple deep breaths, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. It's definitely helped me think more simply about these little things can change the course of my future, right?
Well, and what's so interesting is everything is intention based, and intention really is what's most important. I mean, I even said that with eating.
Right.
Our intention is going to kind of guide what's best for us at that time. Intention is everything. So, even with a nighttime ritual, if you're getting ready to do it and you're thinking, this is overwhelming, this is draining, it's actually not going to serve you to do it.
Right.
Because you're creating an intention to drain yourself and not serve yourself.
Right.
And whatever else. But yeah, everything's just intention based. It's the most important part, which is actually why for me, my nighttime routine and my morning routine is tuning into an intention.
Right. That's good.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thanks.
So, what kind of cards do you use in your readings? I noticed that there was different decks. So,
Well,
I'm like, how many decks do you got?
I do not have a count on them. Well, and it's so funny because I brought this deck. This is literally the very first deck I ever bought. It's called the Enchanted Map, and it's an oracle deck. So there's oracle decks and there's tarot decks. So tarot is based on a journey. There's a major arcana and a minor arcana. I like to say the major arcana is like a book, and the minor arcana is like chapters of the book.
I like that.
Yeah. So the major arcana might be childhood, your college years, just getting married, starting a family, that kind of thing. And then, maybe middle age and then retirement, just bigger chunks of time.
Right.
Whereas the minor arcana might be, during your pregnancy or just smaller chunks of time.
Right. I really like that. I've never fully thought about it that way, but it makes a lot more sense as like the major is more of the overall archetypal energies, and then the minor is sort of the situations within these realities.
Exactly. So the major arcana is all about like shaping who you are. Yes. And the minor arcana is like, these are the events. This is what's unfolding within you, becoming who you are.
Right.
Yeah. And learning the lessons. So, yeah. So I honestly don't know how many tarot decks I have. And, over time, there's been kind of this crossover where tarot incorporates a little bit of oracle now to make it a little bit easier for some people to read. And what I love is different tarot decks will use different imagery.
Right.
And since I'm an intuitive energy reader, I don't just read the card. I don't necessarily do traditional layouts, so I don't necessarily get the message based on the placement of the card.
Right.
As I'm pulling cards, I'm literally channeling what they're going to tell me through the card.
Right.
So it just kind of makes it fun. And then there's oracle decks, and oracle decks, some are just words, some are imagery, just ways to deliver messages, not necessarily based on like a journey.
Right. Like kind of more immediate, like right now, and here's exactly what you need to do.
Yes. And so they're a little, they're considered easier to read.
Right. There's less focus on like the little symbolic details and more on this is the message.
Yes. So that very first session I went to with my Reiki master teacher, at the end of the session, she just grabbed a deck of cards and she's like, here, I feel like you're supposed to get a card. I'm like, it was like me and cards just were meant to be together.
Right?
Just like me and Reiki, I'm like, I don't know if I chose Reiki or Reiki chose me. This is definitely not the only lifetime. I mean, it's like people always go, you embody Reiki. And I'm like, yeah, I really do.
Right. Like you definitely had already been playing around with it. And you remember, like, so this lifetime when you were introduced, it was like, I remember this.
Yes. Yes,
So.
completely. Yeah. And just working with cards is just so natural to me. As an energy reader, honestly, I don't need them. But it makes it easier to get, like, I don't have to expend as much energy to get the message, or it just helps confirm what I'm channeling anyways.
Right. Yeah. So you can be like, okay, I'm on track with this. I'm going to keep going with that.
Yes.
And I feel like it's good for the person too. So when you say like tarantula and then they see the picture, then they can kind of tune into the essence of that animal that maybe they had never thought of a tarantula in a positive light. Like, this is the card I got specifically. And I was like, oh, well, that's an interesting card, but it was good to see it and tune into the imagery of the tarantula.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it is, I channel so much while doing a Reiki session that when the card guidance comes out, it really reinforces what's already come through the session. And I think it can just help the person who's not getting to see and, experience the energy the way I am. It gives you all something kind of more physical and concrete to be like, okay, I'm hearing it 3 times now. I get it,
Yeah, it's like a takeaway.
Yeah.
For sure.
I love that you brought up the tarantula, because that in and of itself would be oh gosh, this must be a mad message, right? Because, well, okay, I guess some people love tarantulas, but
right.
If I saw one, I would run screaming. That would be the human version of me. And then the spiritual version of me would be like, well, now I've got to go look up tarantula and see what the message is for me.
Right, for sure. It's something that I had to sit with for a minute, and think about, like, what if there wasn't fear around the tarantula, how would I respond to its energy, So it was kind of nice. I had to, like, look at the picture and, like, meditate on it.
I love that you did that.
Yes. So I do a reading with the new moon, which is today. So I'm going to be doing some tonight. But I set my intentions first. And then when I do the reading, I always, like, laugh because I'm like, this is exactly what I just said that I needed. And the cards will always confirm it. So it does. It just makes me feel like I'm in tune, and I do a lot of, like, Ascended Master decks and stuff. So not only am I in tune, but these are the masters that are working with me through this next month, that I can think of and tune into when I need their guidance for this topic, right? So I really love the Oracle decks. I know some people are, like, traditional and they're like tarot all the way. But I don't know. It might be, like, because it feels lighter to me, so.
Well, to me, our guides are always going to talk to us in a language that we enjoy, that we understand, that we can most easily get the message. As I keep saying, like, it's always about the path of least resistance.
Right.
And it's really interesting because I think everything's energy based. And so technology is actually just a really easy way that messages are able to come to us. So that's why my go-to, you see a gerbil in my session, how do you know what it means? Well, I trust that when I go to Google and I type in spiritual meaning of gerbil,
right,
whatever message is needed in that moment, because let's be real, out of a million results, Google might show me a different one every time.
Right.
I know that they're going to put whichever message is needed within the first, like, 3 or 4 search results.
Right.
And it just works. And the clairsentient in me can literally feel the connection to the energy, the vibration of it, and go, okay, this is the message.
Right. Yes, this is true. There's, like, a very big yes response to.
Yeah.
This is, exactly what I was sensing. And this is an article the person could read themselves to say, okay, well, the gerbil makes sense for me.
Yes.
I wouldn't have thought about it, but I also didn't think about the howler monkey, and there was a whole message with it, that I would never have received, and I think some people think about their spiritual animal as, like, one thing forever. And some people, it might be that way. But for me, it really does shift. I do have a Black Panther that I work with regularly that does show up. But as far as, like, when I'm in, like, a trance state or when people are working with me, they see all sorts of different animals, all the time. So I'm like, I do think we have these consistent energies, and then there's some that they come and go. Just like a deer might walk through my yard and then walk out of my yard, and then a bunny might bounce in, and then, and so it's like we do have, like, the pet or, like, the familiar, but then we have these other energies that you might just need for a moment. you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So, like me being so connected to animal energy, I thought, oh, what's my animal totem?
Right.
And then I found out for me, it's all of them.
Right.
But I had to laugh because, first of all, I saw a deer on the way here, like right before I got here.
Yes.
And then Black Panther, that has something to do with your personal power, doesn't it?
Maybe. I don't.
I felt it right in the solar plexus area. And that's like our personal power.
That's interesting because this appeared to me when I was doing a past life regression meditation, and right before I like jumped in, I got this fear, and then the panther showed up, and it was such a big animal that I could like put my hand on it, and it could walk right next to me, and I wasn't so afraid to go in because for whatever reason it was like my heart jolted and I was like, I don't know if I want to access this. Then the panther shows up, and now when I do past life regressions, it's just there. So it's one of the regular ones that
Have you looked up its meaning?
I have, but it's been a little while. I guess I should again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there an animal that you work with regularly that shows up for you a lot?
I mean, I see a lot of dragons.
Yeah.
And I have been seeing a lot more unicorn energy lately. It's interesting because dragons work among pretty much all of the dimensions. Whereas unicorns are a very high vibrational energy. They're like ninth dimension. And so a lot of times I would go shopping for a deck of cards, and I would ask if I was, I always ask like, what deck am I being drawn to? And it was never time for a unicorn deck. So whenever it was time for a unicorn deck, I got so excited. I'm like, I'm ready to work with this energy now. I'm more in tune with it now. And I just got so excited.
Right. I love that.
Yeah. So, but I can't say there's any one animal that comes through more than any other for me. They're just all there. And sometimes it blows my mind because I'm channeling the animal and I'm like, if I weren't tuned into energy right now and I just saw this on the road, I couldn't tell you what it was, but I channeled it.
With the howler monkey, because I remember this is, I guess, the clairvoyance, which is the knowing. So as the howler monkey came to me and held my hand, I was like, what kind of monkey is this? I had that thought. And then it was howler monkey. But I didn't hear a voice. I just immediately knew that it was a howler monkey.
Yes.
But I didn't realize it when I first saw it. I just knew it was a monkey.
Yes.
But then it was like, Spirit was like, this is the exact monkey that you need to look up after this so that you know the essence behind it. Because it's a different energy than like, maybe a baboon or something. So
Exactly. And I'll see something and in normal world, I can't tell you the difference between like a gorilla and an ape.
Right.
And yeah, when I'm doing, it's like, it's very specific. This is a gorilla. Okay, got it.
Right. Yes, it's important, right? Like when you said black obsidian dragon for me, it meant a lot that it, like, because I love obsidian. I like to wear it, and it's definitely a crystal I resonate with. And because I struggle, which I'm sure you noticed, with the root chakra area, I do some of the like tourmaline, and obsidian keeps me grounded. Okay. Because I would just probably float away if I didn't have stones like that. So I was like, it's so cool that it's an obsidian dragon.
Yes.
Right. It meant a lot to me to hear that. So.
Yes. So, but that just, it makes sense because you're just, you're connected to the energy. Did you create a black obsidian dragon, or did a black obsidian dragon connect you to the energy?
Is that why I've been so drawn to obsidian? Exactly. It was one of the first crystals I worked with, And it's not pretty and shiny and like sparkly like all the other ones. It's black. So it's like, it had to be some kind of energetic connection because it wasn't based on just the physical appearance.
Right.
Of being very pretty. So with the unicorns, this is interesting because I had this girl tell me I was tuned into unicorns, and I was like, okay. It takes a minute for you to sometimes to open up to certain things. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? Right? She didn't really go into any detail. But after that, I had this Akashic record reading, and I've forgotten about the unicorn thing. Like this was like a year later. And I was asking about like my origin, like my starseed origin. And I was thinking it would say something that I had heard of before, like Pleiadian, which, I had connections to these other places because I've had like hundreds of incarnations not here. But my inception point was in the Pegasian constellation. And I was like, that makes me think of unicorns. in the third eye of the Pegasus, not just like the wing, but specifically where the horn would be in a unicorn. And then I talked to my friend who is an astrologer, and he looked up the moment of my birth, the Pegasus constellation was on the horizon. And I was like, that is oddly irrelevant. I feel like. So I'm like, maybe this is the unicorn energy actually comes from the Pegasian energy that I'm linked to. And I didn't even know Pegasians were a thing. Okay. I had never heard of that.
I think you just taught me something because I did a session today. Mm-hmm. So I work with couples and I can read relationship energy. Mm-hmm. And their like joint relationship and part of like their soul, I guess. Mm-hmm. Not really sure. Not getting a better word right now. At the end of the reading, this beautiful Pegasus just like flew through this like bright golden doorway in the heart space, right? Uh-huh. So I've seen a Pegasus a few times in readings, but it specifically happened today.
That's so weird.
And their charts, their birthdays, I mean, they were born a few years apart, but their birthdays are within like 4 days of each other. Mm-hmm. And several of their planets are the same. And so now I'm sitting here thinking,
like, what was on the horizon?
I did not know there was a Pegasus constellation. Right. So maybe there's some information in that.
That's what I love about the records is like, I wasn't thinking about that at all. And I know that the girl reading my records did not. She gave me the exact coordinates to the center of the head of the Pegasus. And I didn't even know any of this. And when I told my astronomer friend, all I did was give him the coordinates and tell him it was in the Pegasus. I didn't tell him about the third eye part, okay, at all. I totally forgot that piece of information. But when he typed the coordinates in and figured it out, he was like, yeah, it's in the head of the Pegasus. So I was like, holy crap. Like, how would she? You can't make this up.
I mean, energy work is the coolest stuff ever.
And she didn't know any of my questions beforehand, Yeah. And this is a long series of numbers to get the coordinates.
Yeah.
So this was just, I feel like there's always something in every reading that's so oddly specific that it proves the energy is on point.
Completely. So I actually did some distance sessions on some dogs yesterday.
Oh.
I learned a lot about dogs and their purpose and being here with us as our like best friend helpers.
Uh-huh.
And it was funny because when I started on the first dog, it was like he started channeling a message to me and I couldn't understand him. And so I asked him to spell it out, so I'm like tuning into the letters. So, like the Chick-fil-A cows, how they have like their like use Z instead of S and all that stuff, right? So that's how these words were coming out. It was like PLZ, please. And he was asking something about like gently grooming his butt area. And it completely applied. The human, I don't like to say owner, his human. Said, just the other day, I was just massaging around his tail, and he really liked it. And sometimes he's a very sensitive dog in like every way possible. And, sometimes he doesn't like certain massages, but he really liked that. And there were a few other things that incorporated into it, but it was just funny to me, like this message like channeled out before I even got started on him.
Right. He was like, more of that. That will make me satisfied.
He's like, I want you to know about this. And to the dog owners out there, dogs love being spoken to like humans. They really do understand. And every dog I've worked on has always needed to be called a good boy. They all carry a fear of not being like a good boy. I've worked on mostly male dogs so far, so take that for what it's worth.
Right. We all like that, being told that we're doing something good. Like I enjoy when someone tells me, oh, I really appreciate you, right? Thank you for this.
Yeah.
So even the animal kingdom likes to be acknowledged.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. So you've talked about how you work with couples within their relationships. What are some ways that you're able to help them transform their relationships?
It's actually really cool. It's like a program that downloaded to me, and the basics into relationships, like I said, it's like relationships have their own entity. And so the more connected two people are, let's just say it's no coincidence that I started out going to my Reiki master teacher asking about soul contracts, because
Right.
I'm meant to work with relationships and soul contracts and everything involved in relationships. And in fact, when you and I first talked, you helped me understand my Saturn
Was in the seventh
seventh
house.
house, which is about relationships. Like, I take this work seriously.
Right, because that's the taskmaster and like what needs to be done. And
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, which that was just like, of course.
Right.
But so when we're super connected to someone, so committed relationship, marriage, that kind of a relationship, we have our, what we would think is like, oh, my husband is this. My husband is the nicest person ever. Is he the nicest person ever, or does the relationship make me see him as the nicest person ever, right? And so we have our beliefs about relationships. And so I work with the couple to get insight into their beliefs about relationships, because, we carry beliefs from past relationships, from our family members, and from past life.
Yep.
Fun fact, when you meet up with a soulmate in this lifetime that you have karma, soul contracts, stuff like that with, you're going to pick up pretty much where you left off.
Yeah. Yep.
So anyways, so we dig into those beliefs and start healing them, basically beliefs that are being mirrored to you through your relationship, because that will then give you insight into the relationship you have with yourself. So then we're healing the relationship you have with yourself. And then from there, we start tuning into the relationship you want to have. And it's like this relationship blueprint downloads and gives all of this guidance forward. But in the meantime, it's awesome because I'm working with the couples. They're learning about themselves. I'm giving them tools, some tools that I've created, some that channel to me. So like the session I did today, this meditation came through for me to help them clear out an energy that they're both carrying that's affecting the relationship. And so when I meet with them on Zoom, I downloaded a meditation that we're going to do together to help clear this away. And it's so fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's so much like in our like auric field and stuff that we're not aware of, that maybe the person before this one is still kind of in our aura, and maybe we're judging our current partner based on some limiting belief that we had on this other person.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And, we project so easily. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the big things I've been just doing, like studying the shadow. And if you're not accessing it, consciously, like trying to do the work, it's one of the ways it comes out is through projection. So it's like we're all doing it. If you're not doing shadow work actively, then you're probably projecting. So
Completely. Yeah. And I've always felt connected to relationships, go figure, after everything we've said. But to me, they hold the greatest value. They're our biggest teacher. Everything in life is reflecting who you are back to you. And to me, relationships are the biggest opportunity to learn about ourselves and to grow, because if my big passion is more career oriented or something like that, careers don't have free will. But two people in a relationship both have their own free will.
right.
And so it makes it different. You have just the biggest opportunity for learning about yourself, understanding yourself, growing, and it just is really exciting in all versions of the word exciting.
So do you do like access the records sometimes for the people of like their past incarnations together? Have you ever done that?
Yes. So that does come through. Anytime I do a distance Reiki session, I can do just distance Reiki and just balance out somebody's physical energy. But if I'm doing a full session that has the reading with it, I am accessing their Akashic records for whatever wants to come through.
Right.
Yeah.
So if there was something in a past life that they need to kind of work through in this life, you would see that.
Oh, absolutely. And I do see it.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's interesting where, if in a past life you're like, I will always love you, that's going to manifest in this lifetime. And if that person's free will is not choosing you or whatever, that's where it can create the toxic, almost obsessive, like, why can't I move on from this person? And it's because you've made this vow that I will always love you, or I will never get over you. That's actually a stronger connection to that energy. I will never get over you.
So we need to be careful.
Yes.
With what we're thinking, and how we're connecting to people for, like, based on our future incarnations.
Self. Right.
Would be grateful that we didn't make these big commitments.
Right. And so when you can kind of unearth that, you can be willing to say, okay, I'm willing to forgive that. I'm willing to let that go. I'm willing to resolve that. And then you can move on.
Right.
Yeah. I call that like cord clearing. And a lot of people have love-hate relationships with cord clearing. Some people are scared to clear cords because they think it means I will lose that person from my life forever.
Right.
But not necessarily, because you may still have, you might clear out 5 cords that have these attachments to painful things,
right,
that are no longer serving you in this lifetime, but you might still have 100 other beautiful cord attachments.
Right.
Right. And then there are the people who want the cord clearing to mean that the person really is gone from their life.
Right.
Sometimes it's not that simple either, because of what we just talked about. There might be other cords that then need to surface.
Right. Because you think about like a tree being rooted, there's many roots.
Yes.
To that. So you might just clear out the ones that maybe aren't serving them, but keep the ones, the lessons learned. And then maybe you can even appreciate some of the bad things, right? Because you will still be attached to that aspect of like, okay, I've learned my lesson there. I'm ready to move on. So,
yes.
Yeah, that's awesome. For me and my husband, we were brothers in our most recent past life. Or, time is wobbly, but
right.
I think it's so funny when I started learning more about astrology that we both have the same Venus placement in Aquarius. And so much about that energy is like loving someone that's been your friend for a really long time. So like you don't just have these whims of new people. It's like, no, you have to have the friendship energy, or like you don't notice each other. But we've totally been like bros, I'm like, before we were ever like dating, we were like best friends. And I'm like, that's so weird that we both share that place.
So will you be shocked to know my couple today both had Venus placement in Aquarius?
Wow. I mean, I think it's a fun placement. I actually love it, but it is, sometimes I'm like, we are married. We're not just friends. We're married. So like we got to take it, to that more serious level sometimes instead of just being homies, right?
Sounds fun though.
Right.
It's definitely a good foundation.
Right. It was a little weird though to find it out, because you're like, I'm glad we were already married before I found out you were my brother.
I can get that.
Right.
So. Yeah. But that's really only relevant here.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not like we're always brothers. Like we had many incarnations in different relationships.
Yeah.
Like where maybe we weren't even together, but we knew each other. We had been friends in a couple too. So,
Yeah, people can get so worked up and triggered over the terminology of soulmates, but romance and soulmate aren't synonyms necessarily.
Right. And I've always kind of felt like you can have more than one soulmate, and
Absolutely, because of different lifetimes, timelines, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even like you and I are soulmates.
Right. We were destined to meet.
Destined.
We were always going to meet.
Absolutely.
And connect and
Yes.
do this episode.
Exactly.
So in that way, it's like you don't know how it's going to play out, but you're going to bump into that person.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the soulmate. Or maybe a soulmate could just be someone that gave you like a single piece of information that changed your life.
Yeah.
And maybe you don't even remember that person's name,
Exactly.
but they were always a part of your timeline.
To me, soulmate is just two souls that connect. I mean, even the person who's taking my money at the, grocery counter for that moment is my soulmate.
Right, because you're tuning into them.
Right. No, those are the easiest chords to clear.
Right.
Right? Because it was
right.
such a brief, unintense moment.
Right.
Well, it should be a brief, unintense moment.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. But, it's really interesting because we will pull out from someone what we need to learn. If I need to learn patience, I might have a soulmate who cuts me off on the interstate.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like that this is different than the twin flame energy, or?
That's always such a fascinating topic because that was definitely a part of my spiritual awakening. And I want to start by saying I've been shown that the twin flame timelines are going to, they're telling me the word collapse, kind of like landline telephones became irrelevant as cell phone technology came out.
Right.
The purpose of twin flames was to help spiritual awakening. And so as more people are spiritually awake, as you're vibrating at a higher level, it becomes basically irrelevant because your vibrational compatibility just becomes more in tune with so many different people. So, yeah, it's an interesting dynamic meant to teach you a lot about yourself.
Right.
At a very intense level.
Right.
Yeah. So it definitely, there's definitely lots of different stories out there about the twin flame dynamic. And some people wonder, can you have more than one twin flame? And I would say there's no clear-cut answer to that.
Right. It depends on your definition of it to begin with.
Right. And energy can do some really fascinating stuff, as we've been talking
Right.
about.
So
Right.
it can change. Like the last girl I had on that does Akashic Records, she's like, today I might say this, tomorrow they might say that. Because it literally, as we evolve, the universe is also evolving and like the rules change sometimes. She's like, well, I used to answer this question this way, but now the records tell me that it depends on how you define it in the first place. So there isn't one exact answer.
Exactly. Completely. So
I feel like too, like culturally, we're getting more in tune with like the anima and the animus. So like our masculine and feminine energies are merging. And so it's not so much like I need this other aspect to complete me. I'm actually whole, just by myself. Where in the past, maybe we weren't even aware of, maybe men weren't aware of that feminine aspect in themselves, or they were pressing it so much that they never tapped into it. So now it's like, I actually don't have to be split, right? Because I'm whole all alone,
Yes.
And I don't know. I've been a little turned off with some of the twin flame stuff because I've met a couple people now who have stayed in these absolutely terrible toxic relationships because some psychic told them that this is their twin flame and that they're meant to be together forever. And I'm like, watching this woman get the crap beat out of her, and I'm like, I just don't know. So for me, I'm like, I do believe in soul mates and that we do have like contracts with certain people, but I don't necessarily know if there's just one person that, that completes us. I think it is like an unfolding story. And so sometimes twin flames, like that idea could manifest negatively, right? It might be great. It might really be the person you're supposed to spend your whole life with, but I don't know. I've seen it do some weird things to people. So I'm like, I don't personally tell people that, or I don't tap into that.
But you also already answered the question. We're meant to be whole and complete within ourselves.
Right. And these people that are seeking that aren't. And so they're like, I need my twin flame so that I can be whole. And then I'm just like, what's going on?
And the challenges, again, soulmate and romance are not necessarily synonyms, right? I have done a session on someone, and before doing the session, I was like, there's something up between her and her son. We're probably going to set intentions to tune more into that. Those did not end up being the intentions that officially got set for the session. So as I was working on her, I thought, why are we not tuning into the dynamic with the sun? And all of a sudden, it was shown to me the sun is her twin flame. He's incarnated as her son in this lifetime. But they're learning, it's creating a lot of soul growth for them. Right. So there's just so many fascinating things about it. And it was not meant to be the ultimate romantic love story.
Right.
It just wasn't.
Right. I literally knew a girl that went crazy in the night and left her house with no shoes on and went missing because she was looking for her twin flame. And that was the day I was like, I cannot continue, with this. It's romantic, and then you can't be complete without this other person that you don't even know exists,
So here's the other thing I want to say is, okay, first of all, the concept of twin flame is you have your vibration, your core vibration, and your twin flame is this exact vibrational match. Okay. Well, so in theory, everyone is going to have someone on the planet is your closest vibrational match.
Right.
However, as we're ascending and embodying more of our higher vibrational energy as we learn lessons, clear aspects of ourself away that we no longer need, and we're growing, you do, and this was the part that always bugged me, you do change your core vibration as you ascend. So sure, maybe each level of ascension, in theory, you're still going to have your most energetic match,
right?
Which some might call a twin flame, and some might just call a soulmate. And so I lost my train of thought a little bit, but that's okay. Yeah. But just the point being of everyone does have their closest match in any given moment.
Right. That makes me think a little bit. The records told me a long time ago that I incarnated with a pod of people, that there was about 98 of us, that we all had the similar vibration, and that we had, when we came here, there was a mission of that was in alignment. So it makes me think, that's these people. There's 98 of them that have a very similar vibration to me. In that way, it's kind of a similar contract of, we'll meet at some point, or maybe we won't. She said that some of them are in other countries, but what connects me to these people? Probably the podcast, right? That now I'm I have people that I can tune into in places I'll probably never go. So the internet's kind of cool for that. Yeah. But I'm that is similar to the twin flame of we came with this similar vibration. Now as we expand and go through trauma and grief and ascension and are we always going to be on the same vibration? Probably not. But there's going to be points where we are tuning into each other.
So, not to purposely throw you a curveball, however, if that reading was a few years ago, so many people have awakened since then. I would be curious if you tune back in and ask, is it still 98?
Right.
I feel like the number's grown.
Right. That's pretty wild to think about, actually.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I love about the records is I try to tell people you can ask anything, It's not limited, to just this life or the next life. You can ask any, I asked, have I ever been someone I could Google? And I didn't love the answer, but I didn't love the answer, but
what a question, though.
Right? The reader was like, I have to take a step back because I'm upset I never asked that question.
So I feel led to comment on that because, again, where time is an illusion, right? So in theory, it's all channeling through. So you can have multiple people say, I was this person.
Right. Well, because it's at the end of the day, we're all one. We're all one. So we're experiencing life in all these different incarnations.
Right.
So you and I aren't really that separate that we think. The separateness isn't the ultimate illusion.
Right. Exactly.
So more than just me has been Philip III.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's when you just start thinking about all the different directions you can go in when you start studying energy and understanding it, it's just like so mind-blowing.
Right.
And I think that was really a big part of my spiritual awakening journey, is holding up, because I did grow up in a Christian background. And I think, as with anything, they're all such valuable tools, right? It's all valuable tools. And so God is beyond my understanding. I really needed that to help me release myself from understanding and allow myself to open up to things that are just, like I said, mind-blowing.
Right.
And allow myself to see the world differently and to understand the world differently.
Right. And to accept that maybe you won't understand all of it, and you're not necessarily meant to,
Then it wouldn't be any fun, because we would have no reason to connect.
Right.
I would not be experiencing fun and joy and surprise and growth
and discovering things on the way.
Yes.
That's what's so exciting. Yeah. It's like these, I think of hunting Easter eggs, and you're like, oh my God, I found one.
Yes.
And that's so exciting every time.
Okay, so that's what synchronicity does for me.
Yes.
I love synchronicity.
It's definitely how I view God communicating with me.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, I'm in alignment, right?
Yes.
Because this is the hidden message, and it totally makes sense for me right now. And
yes. And like I said, our guides love to talk to us in the ways that we get excited about. Right. Because they want us to get the message.
Right. I feel like once you open up, to this guidance from the universe, it just shows up all the time. Like I talked to a friend I hadn't in 10 years, and he was like, since I talked to you, I have had all of these synchronicities. And I was like, welcome. Because once you start picking up on it, you'll start seeing stuff. So he was like, I looked up and this cloud was a cat. And then I thought of Freya, and I was like, yeah, I know. This is how it works. You're tuning into your intuition. You're tuning into the divine. And it speaks to us in so many different ways that, maybe another person would never have noticed that cloud looks like a cat, but you looked up at that exact moment, right? And that's a message.
Or somebody else looked at it and saw a completely different...
a giraffe. Or maybe they were like, oh, look at that lumpy cloud, right?
Right?
So, you saw the beauty in it, and that means that it's probably a message.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you looked at it, So...
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we go? Maybe some words of wisdom or...
So often I see 1111. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. And so I will just tune in for a moment and ask if there's a channeled message. And sometimes there is a collective channeled message. Okay. And the collective channeled message today was to keep going. And so when I sat here and was like, is there anything more for me to share? It was keep going.
Yes.
Just wherever you're at, keep going.
I feel like I need that message, because I told you earlier I was so drained that I was like, this is it. This is where I'm done. I'm not going to be able to do another day. But I was just so tired that I actually was like, this might be it. I held my husband's hand and I was like, I can't get up. But you say keep going. Maybe that's not just me. Maybe multiple people are feeling that drained energy of what if I can't get through this? So that's so beautiful, because I need that message right now.
Well, that did tie into another message. So often there'll be days where I'm really tired, and I will give myself permission to not accomplish anything on my to-do list. And what happens? I end up accomplishing several things on my to-do list, but it's because I do it in a more relaxed way and I step into the flow.
Yes, flow.
And it works out when we release resistance or allow however we are to be. Mm-hmm. It changes.
Yes.
And so often we are programmed to resist being tired. Sometimes we really do need the rest.
Right.
Or sometimes we just need to, we're in resistance. And if we can just be like, okay, if I end up with energy today, that's awesome. And if not, I'm going to be okay with that. And look at you now.
Right. Well, that's the thing about being a generator with the human design is that if you're tired, that's a message.
Absolutely.
Like, so now that I know that, I might be a little dramatic, but when I'm feeling that way, but I have to acknowledge that I'm resting for a reason. So when I was laying in bed, I was like, well, I'm going to do this episode tonight. So I'm tired right now because I'm going to be building up the energy so that I can do this great show and actually be present. But it took me laying in the bed listening to binaural beats for 45 minutes to relax enough. And, you know, a lot of messages came to me during that time of laying there, right? So I'm like, oh, so the tiredness was to get me to lay in the bed, to get in this, you know, relaxed trance-like state so that I would tune into spirit, right?
Yes, that is so beautiful. On that note, I'm actually being drawn to remember I brought this deck of cards, and I feel like we're supposed to close on a collective message.
Oh, I would love that.
So let's just see what message wants to come through for the audience. So I got 51, Moonlight. You can look, it has like a fairy in the moon, but it wants to be reversed, which is interesting since
It's interesting because it's the new moon. I love you.
So it says, too much analyzing is getting you nowhere. Stop overthinking things. You may be exhausted from second guessing yourself all the time and losing your footing. Are you insecure about your ability to make good choices? Step back and regroup and enter into a more trusting relationship with the flow of life. Don't become overly concerned about perceived mistakes. How will you learn to dance if you don't occasionally take a misstep? On the moonlit pathways, you can discover love and truth and wondrous things. There is nothing to fear but fear itself. Go play, have fun, stay open, and trust. And did I tell you that my cards will always reinforce what's been being said?
Right. Yes. I thought it was crazy because basically the reading we did, like you opened it up and it was like, I think you were overanalyzing, you know? And so I was like, this is so oddly specific for, like, it's a collective message, but it seems like it's talking straight to me.
Yes. Yes.
So,
I feel that. But it's really beautiful that it was pulled out on the new moon.
right. That's awesome.
So cool.
So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for coming out and doing this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah. What's the best way for our audience to get a reading with you or maybe just follow you? I think you have some groups too, right?
I do. So the best way to get to know me, because I have several websites, several just avenues. So I go by Kandi Leigh, KandiLeigh. So if you go to kandileigh.com, that is the best way to kind of find ways to connect with me, find the different ways I work with people, book a reading, or follow me, join my Facebook group. There's a couple of freebies, things like that.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning in. Check us out next time on the Astral Hour.